Hello, everybody, and welcome back to our third module of dialogue here at TARTLE University. You're again here with Travis Kellerman. I could introduce him as an expert, but you probably already know that from the previous two episodes. So, Travis, what is fantastic here for somebody is if they have the tools. What are the tools in dialogue someone needs to really effectively understand what someone is saying, where they are coming from? What is it someone should do? What should they look for? What should they be asking themselves?
We've talked about listening. I think that's a primary tool. But past that, questions are tools. They're not points of attack, as we've also discussed, but they help you get to understanding. They're prompts, not to advance the point necessarily, not to show off how much you know in the question itself, which I think is a habit of students raised in certain institutions. Questions really are tools to access more information. What information do you want to access? How you ask that question of someone is very important. The compassion, the empathy, but what I would qualify as cognitive empathy.
Like that. Mm-hmm.
At a level that's not too deep, not where you're lost in the feeling. So questions asked with respect, with humility. There are no dumb questions, that cliche. Really leaning into also that asking this question may bring up some emotions and some feelings, and not being afraid of those. Acknowledging and disclaiming that that's okay, that you want to give the person that respect and that space if they feel uncomfortable.
Okay. So share with me one example. What would be an example of this question? What would this question look like? And with that, I will pose one more thing. Is this a question to myself about the person? Is this an internal thing I'm asking myself? Or am I actually verbalizing this to the individual in the dialogue?
It's both.
Oh, interesting.
What you choose to share, what you choose to ask, actually verbalize, where you set that point is a process of learning in dialogue, learning how dialogue works, learning basic communication skills, frankly. And a lot of people either haven't developed those or they've been maldeveloped because they've been taught that real communication is about establishing your power, claiming power, actually. Again, the colonizing viewpoint. In a conversation, I need to show that I'm an expert on something, that I'm a powerful person who has solutions, that you should cede power in this conversation to me. So pulling out of that, thinking about, with humility, what do I not understand? What do I need to understand to advance this dialogue? I need to understand more about this person. If you have a view, a very strongly held view about, let's say, economics.
Okay.
And you believe that everyone is entitled to a certain amount of property and wealth, and the only thing that prevents someone from achieving that wealth is their own ability and their access to markets or resources. So let's say you carry the belief that if someone is not able to achieve a certain amount of wealth, it's because they haven't put in the energy. It's because they haven't taken advantage of the resources that should be available to them. That if they have access, as long as they have access in some way, they should be able to use these resources to gain wealth. And in our economic system, in a capitalist system, you would take that belief and use it to justify an ongoing exploitation of many people around the world.
Okay.
If their land, their country, the place where they grew up was rich in certain resources, certain raw resources maybe, you assume or you use that belief to justify taking those resources and turning them into something else to sell in other markets. And the only reason that the people who live there weren't doing that themselves is because they lack the energy or the effort to do it, not acknowledging what else might be prohibiting them from doing that, and also assuming that that's something they want to do. So if you hold that belief, you need to understand that there are many other factors that go into the economics of this situation. The decision of these people to not pursue something, the inability of these people to not pursue something. What are those things? And first and foremost, is my belief complete? Is it affirmed? Is it really justified? Have I really thought about all of the things involved in taking something and turning it into a sellable product or service? So in the world of economics, why someone is poor, the belief systems around poverty, what causes poverty, what maintains poverty, what keeps people from escaping poverty. There's a wide spectrum of beliefs. Acknowledging that there's a spectrum and that you need to understand the other parts of that spectrum, that's the internal question set you need to start asking. What else haven't I thought of? What else could be going on? And so the hesitance, the fear from a, say, Western perspective of asking and admitting in that question that you don't know what else is happening, showing weakness and vulnerability. Again, that takes the humility of entering dialogue.
So is this asking a question to the self of, within the dialogue, right? What I'm listening to and interpreting, or the way I'm having my interpretation and then sharing dialogue back, is this coming from a state of belief? Is this really a big internal question when I talk about, if I'm going to look at my previous experiences and I'm going to use my beliefs, am I then impressing through this dialogue that I'm occurring, to have with this other individual, how I think it's best for them? Or to say that it's not even worth me trying to understand where they're coming from because I already have a belief that they are where they are. So when I came into this dialogue itself, why does it matter? I could just be like, hey, work harder. What are you talking about? It's a land of equal opportunity. Well, no, not really. Is your government oppressing you? Are you fighting for food? Well, if you are doing that daily, well, how are you going to worry about joining the rest of the economic markets, right? No, people will take advantage of that. And so the way I see it is that when you have this function of the dialogue, one of those tools is to ask yourself, when I'm interpreting this or having a conversation, am I coming from a place of just belief? Because belief says, within its own definition, that I don't have all the answers, that I'm letting someone else give me the facts or what the supposed facts are, and I'm going to attach my ideas to that without taking a raw, true experience of this world. And that right there is already going to bar you from the dialogue. So asking that question is almost like one of those checksums on the self. Is this appropriate, the way I'm listening? Am I really allowing what they're saying to come into me in the most wholesome, unadulterated manner possible? Right? And through with that, right, now I can ask the question, well, what is really being said? Outside of my beliefs, outside of actually how I'm hearing it, what is this person actually saying? Because there could be so many more layers that are missed if I start to put that lens of belief on there. So I need to ask myself, is this coming from a state of belief? Experienced beliefs.
And if what they're saying doesn't match to what you want to hear, how do you steer that question? Or how can you interpret what they're saying and match it to what you're trying to understand? For example, if I ask a question about someone's circumstances, why they're in poverty, why they feel they can't escape that situation, I may hear a huge onslaught of fears and complaints and suffering. I may hear that lived experience, and I may hear it in all its raw, unbridled heaviness. So to take that in and realize this is why. This is actually why. They're not matching it with maybe my expectation of, well, it's because I only make this much money in this currency and it requires this much. And so I'm constantly fighting month to month to pay off these things. They're not quantifying and sorting their answer in a way that I may be expecting. It's part of my job and my role in dialogue, again, in meeting someone where they're at, that they are giving me the answer, but I have to work to interpret that answer. I have to maybe ask more questions. I have to understand more about what they're saying. They may be referencing things in their day-to-day life, which I really have no idea. I've never experienced. I don't understand that concept. And so pulling that apart piece by piece, the bigger abstract concept here that I'm hearing is thinking about simplicity versus complexity. And so that split, simplicity, we have to simplify to act. We have to come to some kind of conclusion. We have to essentially stop or pause the dialogue, rather, to keep living, to sometimes keep surviving. When we pick that up again, we should be embracing a certain amount of complexity, understanding, seeking to understand complexity. The oversimplification is where the problems lie. When someone's lazy, when they just need to do something, they just need to, that judgment, inherent in that is a simplification of that person.
Yeah.
You don't want to understand their complexity. You don't want to understand usually your own privilege and your removal from that suffering, from that state of existence. And you also don't want to understand the complex nature that prevents them from achieving whatever you think they should be achieving, from whatever state of existence you think they should be at. So those judgments, stripping away those judgments and purely listening, that takes an internal question set of what do I know and what don't I know? Those are very important. Then it prompts what is being said by this person when I'm trying to answer those questions of what I don't know. Who is saying this? What is their circumstance? So what are they saying and who is saying it and what caused them to feel that way, to have those beliefs, to have this expression that's coming at me right now? I need to go through that series of questions and ask it in a way that they can understand.
And can we talk about who is saying it? Because I find this fundamentally important. If I am coming to you and I've asked myself an internal question that says, hey, is this coming from a state of belief? Am I actually saying it? If I'm having a dialogue, right, and I'm giving you beliefs, is it actually coming from me or is it coming from what someone else tells me is the truth? So then when it comes to the question, who is saying it? That's when you get down to the real nitty-gritty in the dialogue itself. Because when I'm sitting here with you, is this an original thought of Travis Kellerman? Is he really saying this? Or are these built up, assimilated beliefs over time? Or is this someone saying something out of a state of fear? It isn't truly them saying it. It's what they've been told to say. That needs to be recognized in the dialogue. Maybe the person is nervous around you. Who's actually saying it? Are they saying this just for the appeasement of you, for what you want to hear? Those things need to be recognized. And so when you ask the question, who is saying it, it really peels back the onion in that dialogue specifically for that individual. It asks you to go deeper in those layers. It asks you to really read what is being said and then to ask deeper questions. And the best one beyond that, from saying like, who's saying it, is help me understand. And reiterate that point as a question in your toolbox for that dialogue. Because then it forces the person to come back and really think about that belief. And most of the time, people will refine it in the midst of a conversation because now they're actually thinking about it. It wasn't me just reacting in dialogue with a belief that I had. I'm actually forced to chew on this thought and critically think about it. Because now what's being shared, what's being given back and forth is something truly fruitful in the conversation. And now you really begin to understand that other person by asking a series of these 4 or 5 questions, half of which are internal and half of which are external. But the way you can use that in your toolbox can really open that up to the richness of what dialogue is. Is that not correct?
Makes me think of that term, that almost universal phrase that has been weaponized, actually, more recently, I would say, help me understand. You need to pair that with often a framing of what you don't know or what you've never experienced.
Correct.
What you have not done, experienced, seen, felt. Those are very important qualifiers because you're starting with a point of admitting your vulnerability, your lack of experience in some way, that of course you as a human being could not experience the full range of human experiences. And so you're acknowledging that you haven't experienced that range, this particular part of the range that you want to understand, that you believe they have. And if they're telling you they have, you need to understand that. You need to listen for who is saying it.
Yes.
Are they maybe repeating something? Are they in a defensive state still? Are they worried about saying too much? And so pairing it with that vulnerable expression first, so that you don't come off as help me understand. And usually, often what I've seen happen is an attack after that. So it's help me understand how this actually works. And it's said with a smirk, maybe in creative ways where you don't see it, but you're not actually wanting help to understand something. You're trying to call someone out because you don't believe they know what they're talking about, or that they're wrong in some way. So you're criticizing their expression, and that's what it's setting up, and which destroys dialogue.
Which you don't want.
Do you want to blow up dialogue, or do you want to advance it? And that's a way to advance it.
And you have to seek to understand. And so use these tool sets, use these questions to really open up and allow that dialogue to blossom to what it should be. Find the fruits of these discussions, right? Travis, help me understand why using the term help me understand is actually a triggering question, why it has been weaponized. Walk me through that. I didn't know that, and whether or not I'm out of the realm, it's like I truly am unknowing in so many different aspects. But that's a different, point of my character, which I've recognized over time through dialogue. So teach me. And being open to having that where you come to the scenario of teach, learn, and learn, teach. There's this balance, this interaction that occurs between these two entities. Strike that balance with the other. Let them teach you. Let you teach them through these experiences. Who is actually saying it? Dive deeper. Find the criticality of what is being said. Really get down to the brass tacks of the situation. Use these questions as tools in your dialogue toolbox and really understand that other person on the other side, because it will actually help you understand yourself. Feel that?
Yeah.
Awesome. Listen, everybody, thank you very much for joining us again for another module on dialogue with Travis Kellerman at TARTLE University, and we will see you again soon.
See you soon.